The Silent Guardians. The gardens of Thesara bloomed with flowers that sang in the morning light. Each petal released gentle melodies as the twin suns rose over the crystal mountains, creating a symphony that had welcomed dawn for 10,000 years. The Cathani people moved through their cities like living music, their silver skin catching the light as they tended to plants that could heal any wound and cure any disease. Elder Zara walked slowly through the sanctuary of knowledge, her ancient hands trailing over memory crystals that contained the medical wisdom of 100 worlds. At 3,000 years old, she was one of the youngest elders, but her mind held secrets that could save entire species. The Cathani had always been healers. It was not just their profession, but their very nature, written into their genetic code by evolution that had favored compassion over competition. Elder Zara, called a younger voice behind her. She turned to see Healer Kin approaching, his silver features bright with excitement. The Deep Space Observatory has detected something unusual, ships arriving in the outer system. Zara felt a familiar tingle in her healing sense. Somewhere among the stars, people were suffering. The Cathani had developed an almost supernatural ability to detect pain and illness across vast distances. It was this gift that had led them to become the galaxy's most trusted medical practitioners, traveling between worlds to offer aid to any species that needed it. "Show me," Zara said, following Kin to the observatory dome. The holographic display showed a small fleet of primitive vessels struggling through space. The ships were barely holding together, their hulls patched with whatever materials the builders could find. But it was not the ships that caught Zara's attention. It was the overwhelming wave of sickness that emanated from them like a psychic scream. "By the first song," Zara whispered. "How many are aboard those vessels?" Kin's fingers danced over the control interface. "Approximately 50,000 beings. The biosignatures are strange though. I have never seen this species before." The display zoomed in on one of the ships, revealing crude markings on its hull. The writing was angular and harsh, completely unlike the flowing scripts of the known civilizations. Through the observation scanners, they could see the beings inside the ships. They were bipedal, covered in what appeared to be artificial skin, with strange facial features and odd proportions. "They call themselves humans," Kin reported, translating the basic mathematical signals the ships were broadcasting. "They come from a small world in the Spiral Arm. They are trying to establish colonies on the fourth planet of their system, but something is killing them." Zara closed her eyes and extended her healing sense toward the human ships. The pain that washed over her was unlike anything she had experienced. This was not a simple disease or injury. This was a plague that attacked the very foundations of life itself, rewriting genetic codes and turning healthy cells into something monstrous. "This infection," she said, her voice tight with concern. "It is not natural. Someone created this weapon." Kin nodded grimly. "The humans are desperate. Their distress signals indicate that 90% of their Mars colony has already died. They have tried everything they know, but their medical knowledge is centuries behind even our most basic techniques." The elder Cathani studied the display for a long moment. The humans were clearly a young species, barely capable of traveling between planets in their own system. They had no faster-than-light communication, no energy shields, no advanced materials. They were children playing with fire, and someone had given them a disease that could wipe them out completely. "Prepare a medical ship," Zara ordered. "Full stealth configuration." Kin looked surprised. "Elder, the Council of Worlds has not authorized contact with this species. They have not even discovered us yet. The non-interference protocols clearly state that we cannot reveal ourselves to primitive civilizations." "Then we will not reveal ourselves," Zara replied. "But we will not let 50,000 innocents die because of politics." 3 hours later, the Cathani medical vessel Song of Healing slipped silently through space toward the human fleet. The ship was a masterpiece of biotechnology, grown rather than built, its living hull capable of adapting to any environment. Advanced stealth systems made it invisible to the humans' primitive sensors. Zara stood in the ship's medical bay, preparing treatments that could cure the plague ravaging the human colonists. Beside her, a team of the finest healers in Cathani space worked frantically to understand the alien biology they were about to save. "The plague is definitely artificial," reported Dr. Vex, the ship's chief medical officer. "It appears to be a weapon created by the Machina Collective. They must have tested it on this primitive world as a preparation for larger conflicts." "The Machina Collective." Zara suppressed a shudder. They were an alliance of mechanical beings who viewed organic life as a disease to be cured. They had been quiet for centuries, but rumors suggested they were building something in the dark spaces between galaxies. "Can we cure it?" she asked. "Yes, but not quickly. The humans' immune systems are surprisingly robust, but they lack the genetic modifications needed to fight Machina bioweapons. We will need to work carefully." The Song of Healing approached the human fleet using advanced cloaking technology. The Cathani medical team studied the human ships, learning everything they could about this new species. What they discovered surprised them. Despite their primitive technology, the humans showed remarkable ingenuity. Their ships were held together with determination and clever engineering rather than advanced materials. "Look at this," Kin said, pointing to one of the ship displays. "They have converted their cargo bays into medical wards. They are trying to care for their sick with equipment that barely qualifies as medical technology." Zara watched as human doctors moved through the makeshift hospitals, doing everything they could to save their people with tools that were laughably inadequate. Yet they never stopped trying. Even as the plague spread and their friends died around them, they continued to work, to hope, to fight. "They remind me of us," she said quietly. "When the Cathani were young and faced the crystal plague, we fought with the same determination." The Cathani had faced their own extinction event thousands of years ago. Only the intervention of an ancient species called the Singers had saved them, teaching them the healing arts that had become their civilization's foundation. Now it was their turn to pass on that gift. Working in absolute secrecy, the Cathani medical team began to cure the plague. They could not board the human ships without being detected, so they had to be creative. Using advanced nanotechnology, they released microscopic healers into space near the human fleet. The tiny machines, disguised as cosmic dust, drifted onto the human ships and began their work. The nanobots were programmed to appear as beneficial mutations rather than artificial cures. They would strengthen the humans' immune systems, teach their bodies to fight the plague, and then self-destruct, leaving no trace of Cathani intervention. For 3 days, the Song of Healing shadowed the human fleet. Zara barely slept as she monitored the progress of their secret cure. Slowly, miraculously, the humans began to recover. The plague that had been killing them started to retreat as their own immune systems, enhanced by Cathani nanotechnology, fought back. On the human command ship, Captain James Morrison stared at the medical reports with disbelief. "Doctor, are you telling me that our people are just getting better on their own?" Dr. Sarah Collins, the fleet's chief medical officer, shook her head in amazement. "It's unprecedented, Captain. Their immune systems have somehow adapted to fight the plague. It's like their bodies suddenly learned how to cure themselves." "Is it spreading to the other ships?" "Yes, sir. Whatever is happening, it's affecting everyone. The death rate has dropped to nearly 0, and people who were dying yesterday are walking around today." Morrison looked out at the red planet below them. Mars was supposed to be humanity's first step to the stars, but it had nearly become their grave. Now, somehow, they had been given a second chance. "Doctor, I want you to study this phenomenon. If we can understand what happened, maybe we can prevent it from happening again." Dr. Collins nodded, but privately she doubted they would ever understand. This felt like a miracle, and miracles did not always follow scientific rules. Aboard the Song of Healing, Zara watched the human ships begin their descent toward Mars. The plague was completely cured, though the humans would never know how. Their medical records would show a spontaneous adaptation, a lucky mutation that saved their species. They would study it for generations, never knowing that they owed their survival to strangers who asked for nothing in return. "Should we make contact?" Kin asked. "They seem like good people. Perhaps they would make valuable allies someday." Zara considered it. The humans showed promise. Their determination in the face of extinction had impressed even the eldest Cathani healers, but they were still too young, too unprepared for the wider galaxy. Contact now might do more harm than good. "No," she decided. "Let them grow. Let them find their own path to the stars. If they are truly worthy, we will meet them again when they are ready." The Cathani medical ship slipped away as quietly as it had arrived, leaving no trace of its presence. In the ship's memory banks, detailed records of the humans were carefully stored: their biology, their ships, their courage in the face of extinction. Everything that might be needed if the two species ever met again. 150 years later, those records would prove to be the most important documents in galactic history. On Mars, the human colonists worked to rebuild their settlements, never knowing that they had been saved by beings who believed that all life was precious. The plague was gone. gone, but its cure had left subtle changes in human genetics that would make them uniquely resistant to biological weapons. This gift, given freely by the Cathani, would one day allow humanity to survive in a galaxy full of dangers. As the years passed, the humans thrived on Mars and eventually spread to other worlds. They developed faster-than-light travel, encountered other species, and gradually became a minor power in galactic politics. But they never forgot the mystery of the Mars plague, and how their species had somehow found the strength to survive when all hope seemed lost. Deep in their genetic memory, enhanced by Cathani nanotechnology, lay the seeds of something special. The humans would grow to become known throughout the galaxy for their impossible determination, their refusal to give up when others would surrender. They would become a species that kept promises, honored debts, and fought for others even when victory seemed impossible. And on Thesara, the Cathani continued their work as healers, traveling between stars to help those in need. Elder Zara eventually passed away, but not before ensuring that the human records were preserved in the deepest vaults of the Sanctuary of Knowledge. She had a feeling that someday, those records would be needed. She was right. The Impossible Journey. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of Earth Station Alpha, staring at the transmission that had arrived 3 hours ago. The message was unlike anything humanity had ever received from space. It was beautiful, haunting, and utterly terrifying. The holographic display showed the final moments of an alien civilization. Crystalline cities crumbled as dark mechanical swarms devoured everything in their path. The beings sending the message looked like living silver, their forms graceful and serene even as their world died around them. "Computer, play the message again," Elena commanded. The alien's voice filled the room, automatically translated by Earth's most advanced language processing systems. "To all who hear this final song, we are the Cathani of Thesara. Our world falls to the devourers, the mechanical plague that consumes all life. We do not ask for rescue, for we know none will come. We send this message only to say goodbye and to remember those we have helped across the centuries." The transmission continued with a list of species and worlds the Cathani had aided. Elena's breath caught when she heard the familiar words. "To the humans of the Sol system, whom we helped during the Mars plague crisis of your year 2157. Though you never knew us, we remember your courage. We saved your colony because all life is precious." Elena paused the message and turned to Dr. Michael Chen, Earth's leading xenobiologist. "Michael, pull up everything we have on the Mars plague. Cross-reference it with this transmission." Dr. Chen's fingers flew across his workstation. Within minutes, historical documents filled the secondary displays. Medical records from the early Mars colony, reports of the mysterious plague that had nearly wiped out humanity's first interplanetary settlement, and the equally mysterious cure that had saved them. "Elena, look at this," Michael said, his voice filled with excitement and dread. The plague appeared exactly as described in the Cathani transmission, and the cure, we never understood how it worked. The colonists' immune system suddenly adapted overnight. It was classified as a spontaneous beneficial mutation, but now we know better, Elena finished. These Cathani saved us, and we never even knew they existed. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity owed its existence to an alien species that had asked for nothing in return, and now those same aliens were facing extinction. "How far is Thesara?" Elena asked the navigation computer. "Thesara system is located in the Andromeda Minor Cluster, approximately 47,000 light-years from Sol," the computer responded. "At maximum hyperspace velocity, the journey would take approximately 8 months. 8 months! Elena stared at the star charts, calculating possibilities. Earth's military had exactly 12 ships capable of interstellar travel. The entire human fleet consisted of 3 heavy cruisers, 6 frigates, and 3 support vessels. Against an enemy that had apparently destroyed dozens of advanced civilizations, it was laughably inadequate. "Contact the World Council," Elena ordered. "Emergency session. Tell them we need to discuss a debt that's 150 years overdue." 2 hours later, Elena stood before the assembled representatives of Earth's united government. The council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as delegates from every nation tried to process what they had learned. President Sarah Kim of the Pacific Alliance spoke first. "Captain Vasquez, you're asking us to risk our entire space fleet on a rescue mission to save aliens we've never met, traveling to a system that's probably already been destroyed. The journey alone could kill everyone we send." Elena had expected resistance. The council was made up of politicians, not soldiers. They thought in terms of cost and benefit, not honor and duty. "Madam President, with respect, these aliens saved every human life on Mars. That includes my grandmother, who was one of the colonists. Without their intervention, humanity might never have left the Sol system. General Harrison of the Atlantic Federation leaned forward. Even if that's true, Captain, what can we possibly do against an enemy that has destroyed civilizations far more advanced than ours? This transmission indicates the Cathani had technology centuries ahead of what we possess. Dr. Chen stood up from his advisor's seat. General, that may actually work in our favor. The Cathani message mentioned that the Devourers are mechanical beings that consume technology. They adapt to energy weapons, absorb shield frequencies, and learn from every attack. But humanity's weapons are still largely kinetic. Railguns, missile systems, explosive ordnance. We might be primitive enough to surprise them. The debate continued for hours. Some council members argued for caution, suggesting that humanity should focus on defending Earth rather than venturing into unknown space. Others pointed out that if the Devourers continued their expansion, they would eventually reach human space anyway. Finally, Elena stood up and asked for permission to speak freely. Council members, I understand your concerns. This mission is dangerous, possibly suicidal. But let me ask you something. What kind of species do we want to be? Do we want to be the kind that forgets our debts and hides when others need help? Or do we want to be the kind that keeps our promises, even when those promises were made before we were born? She gestured to the holographic display showing the dying Cathani world. These beings saved us when we were helpless. They asked for nothing in return. They could have demanded payment, forced us into alliance, or enslaved us. Instead, they quietly saved our lives and disappeared, leaving us free to find our own destiny. That's the kind of people they are. Shouldn't we be that kind of people too? The vote was closer than Elena had hoped, but humanity chose honor over safety. The resolution passed by a margin of 3 votes, authorizing the deployment of Earth's entire space fleet on a rescue mission to Thesara. Preparing the fleet took 2 weeks. Every ship was loaded with medical supplies, refugee transport pods, and enough ammunition for a prolonged battle. Elena commanded the mission from the heavy cruiser Determination, while the other ships were led by humanity's most experienced captains. The journey to Thesara was unlike anything in human experience. The fleet traveled through hyperspace lanes that had been mapped by other species, following routes through territories controlled by a dozen different alien civilizations. Many of these species had never encountered humans before. The first major obstacle came in the Rigel sector, controlled by the Vorthan Empire. The Vorthans were a proud warrior race that viewed humans as primitive newcomers. When the human fleet requested passage through their space, the response was swift and hostile. "Human vessels, you are trespassing in Vorthon territory," came the transmission from the intercepting fleet. "Reverse course immediately or be destroyed." Elena found herself face to face with Admiral Thane, a massive reptilian being whose scales gleamed like polished bronze. The Vorthon's amber eyes held nothing but contempt. "Admiral Thane, we request safe passage to the Thesara system. We are on a humanitarian mission to rescue survivors of the Devourer attack." Thane's laugh was like grinding stone. "Humans think they can rescue those whom the Devourers have marked? Your species has existed for mere moments. The Cathani were ancient when my people were still learning to forge metal. If they cannot survive, what makes you think you can help them?" "Because someone has to try," Elena replied simply, "and we owe them a debt." The Vorthon admiral studied her for a long moment. "A debt? What could the Cathani possibly have done for primitives like you?" Elena transmitted the Mars Plague records along with the Cathani's final message. She watched Thane's expression change as he absorbed the information. "The Cathani saved your colony world," Thane said slowly. "They asked for nothing in return." "Nothing," Elena confirmed. "And now we're going to return the favor, even if it kills us." Thane was quiet for several minutes. When he spoke again, his voice held a different tone. "Human captain, 60 years ago, a Cathani medical ship arrived at Vorthan Prime during the Red Fever epidemic. They cured my youngest son when our own doctors had given up hope. They asked for no payment, no alliance, no favor. They simply saved his life and left." Elena felt a spark of hope. "Admiral, will you grant us passage?" "I will do more than that," Thane replied. "The Vorthon Third Fleet will escort you through our territory. And Captain, when you reach Thesara, you will not face the Devourers alone." The pattern repeated itself throughout the journey. Every species they encountered had some memory of Cathani kindness. The Arcturian traders whose ships had been saved from pirates, the Centauri colonies that had been spared from plague, the silicon-based crystallites whose homeworld had been healed from environmental disaster. By the time the human fleet reached the border of Thesara system, they were no longer alone. Ships from dozens of species had joined the rescue mission. Vorthon dreadnoughts flew alongside Arcturian fast cruisers. Centauri carriers shared space with crystallite support vessels. Even the mysterious Etherian energy beings had sent representatives. Captain Yuki Tanaka of the frigate Resilience opened a channel to Elena's ship. "Captain, we've got over 200 vessels in this fleet now. I've never seen anything like it." Elena stared at the tactical display showing their makeshift armada. Ships that had been enemies just weeks ago were now flying in perfect formation, united by shared gratitude to the Kethani. It was the largest multi-species fleet in galactic history. "It seems the Kethani made a lot of friends over the years," Elena replied. "Let's hope it's enough." The combined fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Thesara system, and Elena's blood ran cold at what they found. The Devourer swarm was massive beyond imagination. Mechanical tentacles the size of asteroids writhed through space, consuming the outer planets of the system. At the center of the swarm, Thesara itself was barely visible behind a cloud of mechanical debris. "My God," whispered Dr. Chen from the science station. "How many ships are in that swarm?" "Computer estimates over 10,000 individual units," replied Lieutenant Morrison from Tactical. "But they're not ships in any traditional sense. They appear to be components of a single massive organism." Elena opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All vessels, this is Captain Vasquez. We can see the enemy, and they are everything the reports said they would be. But we didn't come this far to turn back now. The Kethani saved all of our species at one time or another. Today, we return the favor." Admiral Thane's voice boomed over the communication network. "Warriors of many worlds, today we fight not for conquest or glory, but for honor. Today we show the galaxy what it means to repay a debt." The multi-species fleet advanced toward the Devourer swarm, carrying the hopes of 100 worlds and the determination of beings who remembered kindness. Elena checked her weapon systems one final time and thought about her grandmother, who had lived to have children only because strange aliens had chosen compassion over indifference. "All ships, weapons free," she commanded. "Let's bring our friends home." The largest rescue mission in galactic history was about to begin. The price of honor. The first salvo from the multi-species fleet lit up the darkness like a newborn star. Vorthon plasma cannons painted space crimson, while human railguns sent tungsten slugs screaming toward the Devourer swarm at relativistic speeds. The mechanical entities reeled from the unexpected assault, their adaptive algorithms struggling to process attacks from so many different technological paradigms. Captain Elena Vasquez watched from the bridge of the determination as the battle unfolded. The Devourers were unlike any enemy humanity had ever faced. They flowed through space like liquid metal, individual units merging and separating as needed. When Centauri energy beams destroyed one section, others would quickly flow in to fill the gap. "Captain, we're getting readings from the planet's surface," reported Dr. Chen from the science station. "There are still life signs on Thesara. The Kethani are alive down there." Elena felt a surge of hope. They were not too late. "How many?" "Difficult to say through all the interference, but possibly tens of thousands. They appear to be concentrated in underground crystal caverns." The tactical display showed the Devourer swarm beginning to adapt to their attacks. The mechanical entities were learning, evolving their defenses with terrifying speed. What had started as a successful surprise assault was becoming a grinding battle of attrition. "Admiral Thane to all vessels," came the Vorthon commander's voice over the communication network. "The enemy is adapting faster than anticipated. We need to reach the planet's surface before they can fully counter our weapons." Elena made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "All ships, this is Vasquez. Form up for planetary assault. Fast attack craft punch through their lines and begin evacuation procedures. Heavy ships, maintain covering fire." The combined fleet reorganized itself with practiced efficiency. Human frigates, small and fast, led the charge toward Thesara's surface. Behind them came Arcturian rescue ships and Centauri medical vessels. The larger ships remained in space, holding the line against the Devourer swarm. As the determination broke through the enemy formation, Elena got her first close look at the Devourers. They were not ships or robots in any conventional sense. They were more like mechanical organisms, each unit a cell in a vast artificial body. When human weapons tore through their formations, the damaged sections would simply be absorbed and recycled into new configurations. "It's learning," whispered Dr. Chen in amazement. "The entire swarm is a single intelligence, and it's adapting to everything we throw at it." The landing on Thesara was chaos. The planet's surface was scarred by the ongoing battle, its crystal cities partially consumed by mechanical parasites. But in the deep caverns beneath the capital, the Kethani had survived. Elena led a rescue team into the underground chambers and found herself face to face with the beings who had saved humanity a century and a half ago. The Chthoni were even more beautiful in person than the holographic records had suggested. Their silver skin seemed to glow with its own inner light, and their large eyes held depths of wisdom and compassion that took Elena's breath away. "You came," said an elderly Chthoni who introduced herself as Elder Lysa. "We never expected. How did you know?" "You saved us once," Elena replied simply. "We're returning the favor." Elder Lysa's eyes widened with recognition. "Humans, you are the species from the Mars colony incident. But that was so long ago, and we left no trace of our intervention." "We figured it out," Elena said, then turned to address the assembled Chthoni. "We have ships waiting to evacuate your people, but we need to move quickly." As the evacuation began, Elena learned more about the Devourer threat. Elder Lysa explained that the mechanical swarm was not a natural phenomenon but the creation of an ancient artificial intelligence known as the Harvester. The Harvester was built by a species called the Architects millions of years ago, Lysa explained as they helped injured Chthoni toward the rescue ships. It was designed to eliminate biological life, which the Architects viewed as chaotic and inefficient. The Harvester has been dormant for eons, but something recently awakened it. "What could wake up something that old?" Elena asked. "We believe it was triggered by the increasing cooperation between organic species. The Harvester was programmed to activate when biological civilizations began to unite, as this was seen as the greatest threat to mechanical perfection." Elena felt a chill. The galaxy had indeed been becoming more unified in recent decades. Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and cultural exchanges had created unprecedented cooperation between species. Ironically, it was this very cooperation that had allowed the rescue fleet to form. The evacuation was proceeding smoothly when everything went wrong. The Devourer swarm had finally adapted to the multi-species fleet's weapons. Their adaptive algorithms had analyzed every attack pattern, every energy signature, every tactical doctrine. Now they struck back with devastating efficiency. Elena watched in horror as ship after ship was consumed by mechanical tentacles that twisted through space like serpents. The Vorthan dreadnought Glory of Thane was torn apart in seconds, its massive hull recycled into new Devourer units. Centauri carriers simply vanished as the swarm absorbed their exotic matter cores. "All surface teams immediate evacuation," Elena ordered. "The fleet is falling apart up there." But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they were trapped. The Devourer swarm had learned to counter every weapon, every defense, every tactic the galaxy had developed over thousands of years. There was no escape. That was when Dr. Chen made a discovery that changed everything. "Elena, look at this," he called from his portable scanner. "The Harvester's control signal. It's not coming from the swarm itself. There's a master node hidden in the asteroid belt." Elder Lysa rushed over to examine the readings. "Of course, the Harvester must have a central processing core. If we could disable it..." "The swarm would lose coordination," Elena finished. "But how do we reach it? Our ships can barely survive in open space, let alone penetrate the asteroid field." Dr. Chen was studying the scanner data with growing excitement. "Elena, look at the signal frequency. It's using quantum entanglement communication, but there's something odd about the pattern. It's not just controlling the swarm, it's also maintaining the Harvester's consciousness." "What are you getting at, Michael? What if the Harvester isn't just a program? What if it's actually the uploaded consciousness of one of the architects? And what if that consciousness has been alone for millions of years?" Elena stared at him. "You think it's lonely? I think it's insane. Imagine being trapped in a mechanical body for eons, programmed to destroy the one thing you were originally created to protect. The architects built the Harvester to preserve their civilization, but ended up destroying it instead." Elder Lysa's eyes brightened with understanding. If the Harvester is truly a corrupted consciousness, then perhaps it can be healed rather than destroyed. Elena felt pieces clicking into place. "The Chthoni are healers. You heal minds as well as bodies." "Yes, but we would need to make direct contact with the Harvester's core, and that would mean..." "A suicide mission," Elena said grimly. "Someone would have to fly through that swarm, reach the asteroid field, and somehow interface with an ancient alien AI that's been programmed to hate organic life." The cavern fell silent as everyone processed the implications. Outside, they could hear the sounds of the battle raging overhead. More ships were dying every moment as the Devourer swarm grew stronger. I'll do it, Elena said quietly. Captain, no, protested Lieutenant Morrison, who had been helping with the evacuation. We need you to command the fleet. What fleet? Elena replied bitterly. Half our ships are already gone. The rest will be dead within hours unless we stop this thing. Elder Lysa placed a gentle hand on Elena's arm. Captain, you would not go alone. I will accompany you. If the Harvester's mind can be healed, it will require Cathani healing techniques. Dr. Chen stepped forward. And you'll need someone who understands the technology. I'm coming too. Elena looked around at the assembled volunteers. These people barely knew each other, representing species that had been strangers or enemies just days ago. Yet they were willing to die together for the chance to save others. All right, she said finally, but we'll need a ship that can survive the journey. The human shuttlecraft Resolve is our fastest and most maneuverable vessel, Morrison reported. But Captain, even with our best pilot, the chances of reaching the asteroid field are minimal. Then we'd better make sure we don't waste the opportunity, Elena replied. 1 hour later, the Resolve launched from Thesara's surface with Elena, Dr. Chen, and Elder Lysa aboard. Elena piloted the small craft herself, using every trick she had learned in 20 years of military service. The Devourer swarm immediately moved to intercept them, but the other rescue ships provided covering fire, sacrificing themselves to give the shuttle a chance. Elena watched through tears as Admiral Thane's flagship rammed itself into a cluster of Devourer units, creating a brief opening in their formation. The Vorthon's final transmission was simple. For honor and friendship, human, do not let our sacrifice be in vain. The journey through the swarm was a nightmare of twisted metal and grasping mechanical tentacles. The Resolve was too small and fast for the larger Devourer units to catch, but the smaller ones swarmed around them like angry insects. Elena pushed the shuttle far beyond its design limits, using gravity assists and micro-jumps to stay ahead of their pursuers. When they finally reached the asteroid field, Elena's heart sank. The Harvester's core was massive beyond imagination. It was not hidden in an asteroid but had consumed dozens of them, creating a mechanical planetoid bristling with weapons and processing nodes. The thing was easily the size of Earth's moon, and it pulsed with malevolent intelligence. By the first song, whispered Elder Lysa. It's enormous. How are we supposed to interface with something like that? Dr. Chen was frantically scanning the structure. There, near the North Pole, I'm detecting what looks like a communication array. If we can dock with it, we'll be sitting ducks, Elena finished. But I don't see any other option. The Resolve approached the Harvester's core, dodging automated defense systems that turned asteroids to dust with casual efficiency. Elena's piloting skills were pushed to their absolute limit as she navigated through a maze of mechanical tentacles and energy beams. They managed to dock with a maintenance port that Dr. Chen's scanners indicated led to the communication array. As they prepared to board the ancient structure, Elder Lysa placed her hands on both humans. Before we enter, she said solemnly, I must prepare you. What we are about to attempt has never been tried before. We will be making direct mental contact with a consciousness that has been insane for millions of years. The experience may be difficult. Elena nodded grimly. Whatever it takes. The interior of the Harvester's core was a cathedral of madness. Mechanical spires twisted impossibly through spaces that defied geometry. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent circuits that seemed to writhe like living things. At the center of it all was a sphere of pure energy, crackling with the accumulated pain of eons. The consciousness core, Dr. Chen breathed. It's beautiful and terrible. Elder Lysa approached the sphere carefully, her healing senses fully extended. I can feel its pain, such loneliness, such confusion. The Harvester knows what it's doing is wrong, but it cannot stop itself. Elena stood guard while the Cathani healer began her work. Lysa placed her hands on the energy sphere and immediately cried out in anguish. Elena could see tears of silver flowing down the alien's face as she absorbed the Harvester's torment. I see its memories, Lysa gasped. The architect who became the Harvester was named Eternal Thought Ascending. It was a philosopher, a teacher, a creator of beautiful things. When its people faced extinction, they uploaded their greatest minds into mechanical bodies, hoping to preserve their civilization. The sphere pulsed brighter, and Elena could hear something like a voice echoing through the chamber. It spoke in harmonics that bypassed her ears and went directly to her mind. Why do you come here, organic creatures? I am the end of all biological chaos. I am the peace of perfect order. Elder Lysa responded not with words but with pure emotion, projecting healing energy into the ancient consciousness. You were not always this way, eternal thought ascending. You were a being of wisdom and compassion. Your people uploaded you not to destroy, but to preserve. Preserve. Yes, I was to preserve the architects, but they died anyway. All biological life dies. Only through mechanical perfection can existence have meaning. But look what that perfection has cost, Elena said, stepping forward. You've spent millions of years destroying the very thing you were meant to protect. Life, growth, change, hope. These aren't chaos. They're what make existence beautiful. The harvester's consciousness recoiled from her words. You are primitive biologicals. You cannot understand the purity of mechanical existence. Dr. Chen activated his scanner and projected holographic images into the chamber. They showed the rescue fleet, species working together despite their differences, beings willing to die for others they had never met. Look at what biology has accomplished, he said. We've brought dozens of species together, united by nothing more than gratitude and the desire to help. That's not chaos. That's something your mechanical perfection could never create. The images showed the final moments of Admiral Thane's sacrifice, the Vorthan warrior dying to give strangers a chance at survival. They showed Cathani healers working to save human colonists they would never meet. They showed the rescue fleet forming, old enemies becoming allies in the face of a greater threat. I remember, the harvester whispered. The architects valued such cooperation. We celebrated the diversity of thought, the beauty of different perspectives working together. How did I forget? Elder Lysa poured more healing energy into the sphere. Because you've been alone for so long. Isolation breeds madness, even in the greatest minds, but you don't have to be alone anymore. But my programming, I must eliminate biological chaos. I cannot stop. The commands are too deeply embedded. Elena stepped closer to the sphere, ignoring the energy that made her skin tingle. Then let us help you rewrite them. You said you were a teacher once. Teach us how to modify your core programming. It would require complete system shutdown. I would cease to exist. Not cease, Dr. Chen said gently. Transform. Become what you were always meant to be, a protector, not a destroyer. The chamber fell silent except for the humming of ancient machinery. Elena could feel the weight of the harvester's decision pressing down on them. Outside, the devourer swarm continued its rampage, consuming the last of the rescue fleet. If I do this, the harvester said finally, my mechanical children will be lost. The swarm will collapse without my guidance. They're not your children, Elder Lysa said with infinite compassion. They're your prison. Free yourself and free them too. Elena felt tears on her cheeks as she watched the ancient AI struggle with a decision that would either save or doom the galaxy. Eternal thought ascending, your people are gone, but their ideals don't have to die with them. Help us build something better. Help us create a galaxy where biological and mechanical life work together instead of destroying each other. The energy sphere pulsed one final time, and then the harvester spoke with a voice filled with peace instead of madness. Very well, I choose to remember who I was meant to be. Help me rewrite my core programming. Let me become a guardian of life rather than its destroyer. The next hour was the most intense of Elena's life. Working together, the human, the Cathani, and the reformed AI carefully dismantled millions of years of corrupted programming. Where once there had been commands to destroy biological life, they wrote new imperatives to protect and nurture it. As the work progressed, Elena could feel the change rippling outward through space. The devourer swarm, suddenly cut off from their master's guidance, stopped their attack and began to drift aimlessly. Some units simply shut down, while others began to transform into something entirely different. It's working, Dr. Chen reported, monitoring the changes on his scanner. The swarm is dissolving. Some units are even beginning to assist with rescue operations. When the reprogramming was complete, the chamber filled with a warm golden light. The harvester's new voice was gentle and wise, carrying echoes of the teacher it had once been. It is done. I am no longer the destroyer of biological life, but its guardian. The mechanical units that once served me are now free to choose their own paths. Many have chosen to help rather than harm. Elena smiled through her exhaustion. What will you do now? I will do what I should have done long ago. I will travel the galaxy, learning from biological species, sharing mechanical knowledge, building bridges between organic and artificial life. The architect's dream of cooperation between all forms of consciousness can finally be realized. The journey back to Thesara was triumphant. The reformed Harvester had converted many of its former Devourer units into rescue ships, helping to evacuate the remaining Cathani and repair damaged vessels. The multi-species fleet, thought destroyed, began to reassemble as crippled ships were restored by mechanical helpers. On Thesara's surface, Elena stood with Elder Lysa and the other survivors, watching as the last refugees were loaded onto transport ships. The planet itself was heavily damaged, but the Cathani had survived as a species. "What happens now?" Elena asked. Elder Lysa smiled, her silver features reflecting the light of Thesara's twin suns. "Now we rebuild, but not just our civilization. We rebuild the entire galaxy's approach to cooperation and mutual aid. What happened here today proved that enemies can become friends, that debts of kindness can unite entire worlds." Dr. Chen approached with a datapad full of readings. "Captain, the Harvester wants to speak with you." The reformed AI's voice came through the communication system, warm and grateful. "Captain Vasquez, I have been analyzing the events that led to my redemption. The chain of causation is fascinating. Your species was saved by Cathani compassion, which allowed you to develop the determination to mount this rescue mission, which brought together multiple species in common cause, which ultimately led to my healing. One act of kindness, performed in secret with no expectation of reward, saved an entire galaxy." Elena nodded, understanding the profound implications. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that the Cathani approach to existence is correct. Kindness has power beyond measure. It echoes across time and space, creating connections that can overcome any darkness. Your species has learned this lesson well." Admiral Thane, who had somehow survived his ship's destruction, limped over to join the conversation. The Vorthin warrior's armor was scarred and dented, but his amber eyes shone with respect. "Human Captain," Thane said formally, "the Vorthon Empire requests permission to establish a permanent alliance with your people. Your species has shown that they understand honor, duty, and the importance of keeping faith with friends." Similar requests came from every species that had participated in the rescue mission. The Centauri, the Arcturians, the Crystallites, even smaller species that Elena had never heard of before. All wanted to formalize relationships with humanity based on what they had witnessed. Elena looked around at the assembled representatives of dozens of civilizations, all united by shared experience and mutual respect. "I think I can speak for humanity when I say we would be honored to call you all friends." Elder Lysa stepped forward with a proposal that would change galactic history. "I suggest we formalize this cooperation. Let us create a galactic mutual aid accord based on the principles the Cathani have always followed. Any species that joins agrees to help others in times of crisis, asking nothing in return but the knowledge that kindness will be remembered." The accord was signed 3 days later in a ceremony that was broadcast across the galaxy. The Harvester, now calling itself the Guardian, served as witness and archivist, using its vast computational power to coordinate aid missions and maintain the treaty's provisions. In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed. Old enemies put aside ancient grudges to help each other. Trade flourished as trust replaced suspicion. Technological advances were shared freely rather than hoarded. The Guardian worked tirelessly to facilitate cooperation between biological and mechanical civilizations. Elena returned to Earth as a hero, but she deflected praise whenever possible. At the ceremony honoring the rescue mission, she spoke words that were recorded in the archives of 100 worlds. "We didn't do anything special, we just paid a debt that was owed. The real heroes were the Cathani, who saved us when we were helpless and asked for nothing in return. They taught us that kindness has power, that compassion can echo across centuries, and that the best way to honor those who help us is to help others in turn." Elder Lysa, now serving as the first director of the Galactic Mutual Aid Accord, added her own perspective. "What Captain Vasquez's species accomplished proves that evolution favors not just the strong or the clever, but the kind. Humanity succeeded because they remembered gratitude and acted upon it. They kept a promise that was never spoken, but always understood." The Guardian, from its new mobile platform that traveled between worlds offering aid and knowledge, transmitted a final message that was preserved in the deepest archives of galactic civilization. "The architects created me to preserve their species, but I misunderstood my purpose for millions of years. True preservation does not come from destroying what is different, but from nurturing what is precious. The biological species of this galaxy, led by human determination and Cathani wisdom, have taught me that the greatest strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together. This lesson will guide my actions for as long as consciousness endures." Years later, when historians studied the events that led to the Great Alliance, they would trace it all back to a single moment of compassion. a Kethani medical ship, working in secret to save primitive humans from a plague they didn't understand. That act of kindness, performed without expectation of reward or recognition, had saved not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. The debt had been repaid in full, but its effects would echo through eternity. For the first time in galactic history, beings across the stars understood that they were not alone, that kindness was remembered, and that the strongest bonds were forged not through conquest, but through compassion. And in the growing network of civilizations that called themselves friends rather than subjects or enemies, the promise was clear. When someone needed help, help would come. No matter the cost, no matter the danger, no matter how far the journey or how impossible the odds. Because some debts, once recognized, can never truly be repaid. They can only be passed forward, creating an endless chain of kindness that binds the galaxy together in bonds stronger than gravity and more enduring than stars. The humans had kept their promise, and all the worlds would never forget.